Welcome back to Wrestling Talk. I am your host, Alexis Carrillo, and it is a pleasure to be back here on this chair after almost 3 weeks of not having an edition of Wrestling Talk. And the only reason I'm going to give out to you is that I've been busy with my day job. Again, it's no excuse. I am back here to talk about professional wrestling. And with that said, with that out of the way, let's talk about the fact that the current WWE Undisputed Universal Champion Roman Reigns is involved in some type of controversy. Because just a few days ago, at a live event, I believe in New Jersey, Roman Reigns made a speech that brought some headlines to the IWC, that brought some headlines to a lot of wrestling fans out there, because basically Roman Reigns said that this could be the last time he appears in that town for WWE in a very, very long time. And he basically said that he was moving on, or he was starting to move on into a new phase of his life, into a new phase of his career, which would apparently take him away from most WWE dates in the future, or rather as many dates as he had been doing over the past few months. He had been working over the past few months with WWE. That, accompanied with the fact that a lot of wrestling news websites out there, Sean Ross Sapp, WrestlingInc.com, among others, are reporting that Roman Reigns recently signed a new deal with WWE. Now, among those reports, it wasn't specified if it was until 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now. The end date of those contracts wasn't specified, as WWE wants to keep that under wraps as much as possible, and that's understandable. That's their biggest star currently on the roster. They don't want any uh, leaking of when his contract and when his WWE term might end heading out there. But they did state that within that contract, Roman Reigns was set to work less and less less and less dates with WWE. More specifically, he most likely would only work Raw, SmackDown, and some select WWE pay-per-views. And we're seeing that pretty much 3 weeks from now, when we have another WWE pay-per-view premium live event. That's what they like to call them now. Hell in a Cell. And the current double champion is set to not appear at that pay-per-view. Which also means that ever since Roman Reigns won the WWE Undisputed Universal Championship, and he beat Brock Lesnar for the title, Roman Reigns has not been able to defend said championship or championships at any of these events in 2 months, if that were to happen. Number one, let's get into the headline of this, and Roman Reigns not being able to work as many dates with WWE as he has been over the past few years. That's understandable, because WWE has done a fantastic job of building Roman Reigns up to be the tribal chief, to be the head of the table. And Roman Reigns himself, you got to give him some credit. He has betrayed himself on television in such a manner that he is the top guy. He is the top dog. There's no denying that. Whenever he's on screen, whenever he's on TV, you can tell this man is different, and this man is above every other superstar on that roster. And yes, that includes guys like Randy Orton. Just simply put, Roman Reigns is on a different level. So with that said, is he about to take time off from WWE? Is he about to start his transition away from the wrestling and sports entertainment business and just head straight into Hollywood, much like The Rock and John Cena and Batista did before him? And the answer to that, we just don't know. We just don't know. We just have to wait and see. But I will tell you this. Roman Reigns versus The Rock is a match that everyone wants to see at next year's WrestleMania. Everyone wants to see that. Now, The Rock is a very, very busy man, so it is very unlikely that he might be able to fit that into his schedule. We just don't know. But this could play into the storyline heading into WrestleMania for that match, which is going to take place in Inglewood next year on the show of shows. So we just don't know. One thing is for certain, WWE is going to be very, very, very much in trouble if Roman Reigns does leave, because, yeah, you've got guys like Randy Orton and like Drew McIntyre and AJ Styles and Edge and Bobby Lashley and Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes. But none of them are up to the level that Roman Reigns is. Roman Reigns is your megastar. He is your top merchandise mover other than Stone Cold Steve Austin at this point. That means something. So WWE has to start working on a plan B. They have to start working on a contingency plan in case Roman Reigns does end up leaving for Hollywood. And number two, you've got to get into the fact that WWE's ineptitude of putting up challengers to face off against Roman Reigns for the disputed title or for any one of those single championships, which I assume at one point in the very near future they will have to disband and will have to make the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship separate once again. But like I said, all these guys I mentioned, Lashley, Rhodes, Styles, McIntyre, Orton, Edge, among many, many others that they could bring up to at least put up a fight against Reigns in one of these pay-per-view events for the title. WWE just seems to have dropped the ball there. I mean, we're talking about Roman Reigns being on this level, being the top character on WWE right now, currently. And it has been the worst that it has been. You had Chris Jericho back in 2001. He became double champion. That worked. You had Randy Orton become double champion in 2013. That worked. Now, it just seems like Roman Reigns is on standby, and WWE is keeping him on standby for the man that they appear to be putting all their marbles in right now. And that man is Cody Rhodes. Because Cody Rhodes, ever since his return to WWE at WrestleMania, has been marketed, has been portrayed, has been featured as a top star on Monday Night Raw and in the WWE. He is front and center for WWE's next pay-per-view event, Hell in a Cell, and with that, there is no doubt in my mind that Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins inside Hell in a Cell is going to main event that pay-per-view event. The real question is, where does WWE go from there? Because at this point, Cody Rhodes is just going to beat Seth Rollins at Hell in a Cell. I think that's the right choice. I think Seth Rollins can take a loss like a champ. His character is just that damn over with the crowd, to the point that if he keeps losing to Cody Rhodes, it's just a matter of Cody Rhodes came back after 6 years and he's just that damn good. And yeah, Seth Rollins He's a, 4 or 5-time world champion in WWE. He could take the loss. He doesn't lose any credibility by losing to Cody Rhodes again and again and again and again. As a matter of fact, I think it would add to the entertainment aspect of his character. And possibly, in the very near future, Seth Rollins could become a babyface, a full-fledged babyface in his character because of these losses to Cody Rhodes. But right now, it just seems like Cody Rhodes is the guy that WWE is putting everything they can into to try and dethrone Roman Reigns, which is something that they should be absolutely shooting for, because like I said, if the match that everybody wants at WrestleMania is Roman Reigns versus The Rock, I beg the WWE, please do not have that match, Rock versus Reigns, be for any kind of championship. It doesn't need it. Just like this past year's Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar's WrestleMania main event match did not need both titles on the line. Rock versus Reigns doesn't need a championship at all. It doesn't. So my simple solution is, if you're pretty much trying to position Cody Rhodes in a way, in a manner of having him be your next top guy for the next few years, have him win Money in the Bank. Have Roman Reigns defend his undisputed Universal Championship at Money in the Bank against Shinsuke Nakamura. There's some bad blood there. Nakamura has been positioned as a top contender for the title for a few months now. He's, in my mind, at least storyline-wise, owed a one-on-one match with the Tribal Chief. Have that happen at Money in the Bank. And have Cody Rhodes win Money in the Bank briefcase. And have him challenge Roman Reigns for the title at SummerSlam. Because at this point, there's only 2 guys that are going to dethrone Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. And there's only, in my mind, again, this is all from my point of view, this is all from my fantasy booking, there's only 2 men and 2 places that this is going to happen. It's either going to be Cody Rhodes dethroning and beating Roman Reigns for the title at SummerSlam in Nashville, Tennessee, or it's going to be Drew McIntyre at the big UK Super Show in September. I think those are the only 2 options, because again, McIntyre versus Reigns, I predicted it earlier this year. I think that would have been a top match, your top main event for WrestleMania. They didn't go through with it. You got a Super Show in the United Kingdom, and your top star, and one of your top stars is British, Drew McIntyre. No better stage, no better opportunity for that to take place. But again, it's up to WWE. It's up to the fans. As a matter of fact, who do you think is going to be the one, is going to be the man to dethrone Roman Reigns for the titles? Is it going to be Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam, or is it going to be Drew McIntyre at the UK show in September? Or do you think something else is going to happen? Something else entirely, and someone else entirely is going to be able to position himself to beat the Tribal Chief in the very, very, very near future? Leave your thoughts, comments, and predictions on the comment section below. And speaking of Cody Rhodes, the only reason today in the IWC we have Maxwell Jacob Friedman talking about leaving AEW in 2024 and not re-signing with the company that he is pretty much identified with up to this point. The only reason that's happening is because, WWE has booked Cody Rhodes in such a manner that they are making some of the stars in AEW really doubt whether or not they should actually consider jumping ship to WWE. And make no mistake about it, You'll ask any superstar in Impact Wrestling, in Ring of Honor Wrestling, in AEW, in Major League Wrestling, in the NWA, in New Japan Pro Wrestling, anywhere in the world. If you are not currently employed by WWE, and you are a lifelong wrestling fan, your career, your life is devoted to the professional wrestling industry, and ladies and gentlemen, you want to work for the WWE. And I know this is going to get a lot of hate from a lot of wrestling fans in the IWC because they just go against the grain. They just go against the WWE, which is the machine, the empire. They don't want to support that notion that every single superstar, every single man, every single woman out there wants to work for that company. That's been their dream. And even if they say no, like a lot of them might, they're just lying to themselves and to the people that are listening. Because again, WWE is the end-all, be-all. They are the number one company. They have been for the past 30 years. And that's just not going to change any time soon. So MJF going and jumping ship to WWE is a very, very real possibility. Because look at Maxwell Jacob Friedman. Look at what he's done with AEW. He's never been a champion. He's only won that Diamond Dozen ring 3 years in a row. That's it. But he's never been a champion. He's never been the world champion. He's never been the face of AEW. And yet WWE recognizes that he is a top star, a top tier talent. In the ring, on the microphone, everything he does garners attention. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a valuable star. He is. Maxwell Jacob Friedman is a valuable star. So if I'm Tony Khan right now, and I'm trying to negotiate MJF into re-signing with AEW in the very near future, I'm sweating bricks. I am. Because MJF is a once-in-a-lifetime, in my mind obviously, MJF is a once-in-a-lifetime generational superstar. And yes, how he portrays himself on TV and how he portrays himself on social media, it does seem like he has some attitude issues, but you gotta work with him. For the business, you gotta do good business. And MJF isn't good business. He is great business. He is absolutely great business for AEW and for the professional wrestling industry itself. Now, will he jump ship to WWE anytime soon? Of course not. He still has a contract. Will MJF re-sign with AEW anytime soon? It appears not. It appears that's not going to be the case. He's going to carry this on right to the finish line, right until that buzzer hits, and then in 2024, we'll see what happens. But the question I want to ask all of you fans out there, and what question I'm going to ask myself right now is, do you and do I want to see MJF in the WWE? Do I want to see him leave AEW? And the very, very simple answer to that question is hell effing no. Hell effing no. Do I want to see MJF in WWE? Of course not. Because that would take away from one of the very basic aspects in sports, and possibly in life. That would take away from the fact that there is loyalty with one company. There is identity with one company. You talk about WWE and you talk about The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker and Triple H and John Cena. You talk about WCW back in its heyday. And you talked about Sting and Diamond Dallas Page to a lesser extent and Goldberg. Guys who were identifiable with WCW at the time. You talk about TNA wrestling and you talk about AJ Styles and Samoa Joe and Jeff Jarrett and many, many more. Because they just stuck with that company for a determined amount of time that you just couldn't think of them in any other place rather than where they were at that time. And that is something that I want for MJF. That is something that I want for AEW. And AEW needs those type of guys. AEW is building up their own roster. You got Wardlow, you got MJF, you got Darby Allin, you got Britt Baker. Whether a lot of fans out there like it or not, you got Sammy Guevara. And you want MJF to be a part of that. Because MJF is that damn good. He is that damn better than most of the stars out there. And they all know it. So if I'm Tony Khan right now, I'm doing everything within my power. Everything other than giving the house away, which would be AEW itself away. I'm doing everything in my power to convince MJF to stick around with AEW. Because I want MJF to be synonymous with All Elite Wrestling for years and years and years and decades to come. I want MJF to be 10, 15, 20 years deep with All Elite Wrestling. And for fans to be able to identify themselves in MJF. However hard that might be to imagine, that's something I think the wrestling industry and AEW itself needs at this point. So with that said, what do you think? Do you think MJF is going to end up going to WWE in 2024? You think that might work out for them? Or do you agree with me in the fact that MJF and AEW should be synonymous with each other for decades to come? Leave your thoughts, comments, and predictions on the comment section below. And not only that, Double or Nothing is what? 2 weeks away? And the main event of Double or Nothing is going to be Hangman Adam Page defending his AEW World Heavyweight Championship against CM Punk in a match for the ages, in a dream match itself. Because now it is finally time for CM Punk to have a world title match, for CM Punk to be in the main event, in a true main event of an AEW pay-per-view. 9 months in, almost 10 months in, can CM Punk become AEW World Champion? And the answer to that is, of course he can. Of course he can. Of course he can beat Hangman Adam Page. And everything that they've been booking, everything that they've been saying up to this point on Dynamite and on Rampage, it just seems like that might be the road that AEW is going to be taking. But the question I ask you all, and the question I'm asking AEW management is, are you willing to sacrifice Hangman Adam Page, a star you've created for the past 3 years, a star you've built up, someone you've told a story with for the past 3 years, to place the World Championship, your championship, your holy grail, your brass ring, on a man that, yes, he debuted, he made his return for AEW back in August of last year. And yes, he's brought in headlines. And yes, he's created some great moments in CM Punk. But he hasn't changed AEW in the least. Ratings haven't gone up. Revenue hasn't gone up. Nothing's changed with CM Punk returning to the wrestling business, with CM Punk making his return with AEW. Nothing's changed. Are you willing to sacrifice Hangman Adam Page for that? For a guy like CM Punk, who, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but by the way, CM Punk does not need to be world champion at all. He doesn't. He does not need to be the world champion at all. His name value, his pedigree, what he's done for the wrestling industry for the past 20 years, pretty much, what was it? 7+ years out of it. What he's done, that's enough. That's enough to give the fans what they want, to give the fans dream matches, and to honestly make money off of CM Punk. He doesn't need the world championship. He doesn't. Is AEW honestly willing to sacrifice one of their top guys, one of their top young up-and-comers, for CM Punk? And for me, the answer is yes. They are willing to do that. Because we've seen Christian Cage come in to AEW. We've seen The Big Show come in. We've seen Jeff Hardy come in. We've seen Matt Hardy come in. We've seen Jon Moxley come in. We've seen Chris Jericho come in. And many, many more to come. And they've all been placed in top positions. Because the ratio right now is, if you're a former WWE guy, you've got a top spot in AEW. That has been the case with All Elite Wrestling. And I don't fault them for that. They are the bigger names. They have lesser time in the wrestling industry than your younger guys. But again, AEW has got to really be careful with how they handle this, how they handle all of this. Because we are talking about the future of your industry, about the future of AEW in Hangman Adam Page versus a guy in CM Punk who basically signed his return to the company last year and most likely will not re-sign with the company if his pay doesn't increase, if he doesn't get more of what he wants with the company when that term comes to pass. When his deal comes up, he's going to want to negotiate in a much higher value. And the fact of the matter is, like I said earlier, like I said a few minutes ago, CM Punk returning to AEW, CM Punk returning to the wrestling industry, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. The ratings for Dynamite and the ratings for Rampage are still hovering in the exact same position that they were before and after CM Punk made his return. So if I'm booking that show, if I'm booking Double or Nothing, Hangman Adam Page beats CM Punk. Hangman Adam Page retains his title. Because I'd rather have Hangman Page get that win on his belt and continue his title reign and eventually lose that championship to MJF rather than have CM Punk win that title at Double or Nothing and then end up having MJF beat CM Punk again for that world title. But that's just me. I know a lot of fans out there want to see CM Punk as world champion again. I don't think he needs it. I don't think Edge needs to be world champion in WWE again, ever again. That's just my thought. There comes a time when certain stars get to a point where they don't need the world championship to be a big deal. They're a big deal themselves. And that, my friends, is CM Punk. So if it were up to me, Hangman Adam Page retains at Double or Nothing. No questions asked. In a banger of a match, no doubt. CM Punk can still be portrayed as a top star in a losing effort at Double or Nothing. Will AEW go for it? I doubt it. I think they might end up putting the title on Punk and If that does happen, we'll just wait and see what they do with it. So with that said, what do you think? Do you think it would be a good idea to put the title on CM Punk? Do you think it would be a good idea to keep Hangman Adam Page with the title? Leave your thoughts, comments, and predictions on the comment section below. And speaking about guys that are a big deal, and speaking about guys that don't need a world championship to be portrayed as a big deal, we're going to talk about a guy who is already a big deal, who doesn't need to do what he's about to do. Of course, I'm talking about the fact that Ric Flair, WWE Hall of Famer, Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, who is, I believe, 70 plus years old, has announced via Twitter that he is making an in-ring return for one final match on July 31st for Jim Crockett Promotions. And all I've got to say is that's disappointing. That's unsettling. Because we are talking about a man who had the perfect send-off 14 years ago from WWE at WrestleMania, the grandest stage of them all, the biggest stage possible, for Ric Flair to have his farewell match, his retirement match. One of the most beautiful moments in wrestling history continues to be tarnished. Not only that, Ric Flair had the perfect opponent in Shawn Michaels, a legend, as his final match in WWE. And 14 years later, Ric Flair, with all due respect for what he's done for the business, with all due respect for what he means to the business, Ric Flair continues to tarnish and disrespect and spit on all of that. He did so when he went to TNA back in 2010, and he had that stupid match against Hulk Hogan, he had that stupid match against Mick Foley, and he had that stupid match against Sting in 2011, and he's doing it again very, very soon for an independent wrestling promotion at 70 plus years of age. And it appears it's going to be a multi-man match, no less. And it's just sad. Honestly, it's just sad to see Ric Flair, the legend, the Nature Boy, the 16-time world champion, 21-time world champion in a lot of fans' eyes. But WWE only recognizes 16 of those world championships. And honestly, for me, I'm not interested one bit in that match. I don't think he needs to do that anymore. But Ric Flair is the man. He believes he's the man. He wants to get in the ring. He's going to get in the ring. As a matter of fact, it's already confirmed. It's going to happen. And an independent promotion, Jim Crockett Promotions, I mean, if they're presented with an opportunity to sell more tickets, if they're presented with an opportunity to grab the wrestling media's attention by having Ric Flair have an in-ring performance for them, in the spirit of great business, they're going to take it. I don't fault them for that. I can't blame them for that. Because it's not Jim Crockett, because I'm pretty much sure it's not Jim Crockett Promotions reaching out to Ric Flair saying, hey, yeah, Nature Boy, Ric Flair, yeah, I know you had surgeries and you had a near-death experience over the past 2-3 years, but, we need to sell tickets for this event. You want to be a part of this match? I'm sure Jim Crockett Promotions wasn't on the phone doing that. I'm sure it was Ric Flair calling them, calling anyone he could call. Hey, I want to get back in the ring. I want to have one more match. I want to be back in the limelight. I want to do something. And again, it's just hard to see that. Because like I said, Ric Flair has his own reasons for doing this. I'm sure he feels like he has to do this. But it just seems like a wasted opportunity. It just feels like Ric Flair should not be doing this anymore. He shouldn't. And it's just a shame for everything WWE did for him on that farewell match. And again, what are you going to do? So honestly, my thoughts on this is it's just unnecessary. And just that, Ric Flair shouldn't be wrestling anything anymore at this point in his life and at this point in his career. That's just it. That's just the end-all be-all things. And I'm not even going to plan a question to all of you guys because, again, I don't think this should be happening. So with that said, it's been a pleasure to be back here on the YouTube channel talking about professional wrestling, good and bad. And I'm hoping to be able to do this on a more consistent basis. Again, I'm not promising anything because promises are empty without action. And all I can say right now is, I've been Alexis Carrillo. It's been great to be talking about professional wrestling here today. And I'll see you next time.